You wake in absolute darkness. For a moment, you don't remember where you are. Then the cold hits you. That bone-deep cold that makes your lungs ache with every breath. You're in the cave. Your family sleeps around you, pressed close for warmth. The fire has died to embers, casting barely enough light to see your own hands. And then you hear it. Breathing. Heavy. Rhythmic. Coming from deeper in the cave. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You know that sound. Every child in your clan knows that sound. It's the sound that ends lives. You reach for your spear with trembling fingers, but you already know the truth. If it's here, if it's this close, someone isn't going to see the morning. This was life 40,000 years ago. Not the life we imagine when we think of early humans. Not the brave hunters, not the cave painters, not the noble survivors. This was the life we don't talk about. The terror in the night. The constant knowledge that you are being hunted. Our ancestors lived in a world where humans were prey, where leaving the fire meant death, where sleep itself was a risk. They lived with fear we can barely comprehend, in a frozen world ruled by predators so powerful, so perfectly evolved to kill, that humans, despite all our intelligence, were simply food. This is their story. This is how they died. And somehow, against every conceivable odd, this is how we survived. The Pleistocene epoch began 2.6 million years ago and ended just 11,700 years ago, a blink of an eye in geological time. For most of this period, the Earth oscillated between frigid glacial periods and brief, warmer interglacials. During the height of the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago, ice sheets 2 miles thick covered Canada, much of northern Europe, and parts of Asia. Imagine standing at the edge of one of these glaciers. The wall of ice towers above you, disappearing into clouds. It groans and cracks, a living thing of impossible scale. The air is so cold it burns. And this ice, this is what covered a third of Earth's land surface. But this frozen world was not barren. It teemed with life. Where ice didn't reach, vast grasslands spread across Siberia, Alaska, and Europe, the mammoth steppe, an ecosystem unlike anything that exists today. Here, grasses, sedges, and flowering plants supported the greatest concentration of large mammals Earth has ever seen. More biomass per square kilometer than the African savanna at its peak. More diversity than any modern ecosystem. Woolly mammoths moved in herds numbering in the thousands, their curved tusks sweeping through snow to reach the grass beneath. Some tusks grew 16 feet long, spiraling upward in impossible curves. Adult males stood 11 feet at the shoulder and weighed 6 tons. When a herd moved, the ground shook. You could feel them coming from miles away. Giant ground sloths browsed on trees, standing upright to reach branches 20 feet high. Megaloceros, the Irish elk, carried antlers spanning 12 feet across, the largest of any deer that ever lived. The weight of those antlers, 90 pounds, was so great that males could only carry them for a few months each year before shedding them. Woolly rhinoceros, armored in thick fur and bad temper, defended territories with deadly seriousness. Cave hyenas, larger and more powerful than their African cousins, hunted in packs and cached their kills in dens. Steppe bison, with horn spans of 7 feet, moved in herds that darkened the plains. And among these giants walked early humans. Homo sapiens, who had migrated out of Africa less than 100,000 years before, now found themselves in territories already occupied by our evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals and Denisovans. We weren't even the only human species. We were one type among many, competing for resources, sometimes interbreeding, always struggling. But we all shared something in common. We were not at the top of the food chain. That position belonged to predators that had evolved over millions of years to hunt and kill with terrifying efficiency. Predators that were faster, stronger, better armed than any human could ever be. Predators that had been hunting these massive prey animals for hundreds of thousands of years before humans arrived. We were the newcomers, the intruders, and to them, we were just another prey species. Slow, weak, soft, easy to kill. The average lifespan of a human in the Ice Age was 25 years. Most people died violently. Disease, starvation, accidents, these were constant threats. But predation? That was the nightmare that never ended. The fear that lived in every shadow, every sound in the darkness, every moment away from the fire. Because fire was all we had. Fire in each other. And sometimes, that wasn't enough. Deep in the mountains of Europe, in caverns that stretched into absolute darkness, lived one of the most formidable creatures our ancestors would ever encounter. Ursus spelaeus, the cave bear. Standing 11 feet tall on its hind legs and weighing up to 1,500 pounds, the cave bear was significantly larger than any bear alive today. 30% heavier than a modern Kodiak bear. Its skull was massive, with a domed forehead that housed a brain capable of remarkable intelligence. The cave bear could solve problems, remember locations, recognize individuals, both its own kind and the humans it encountered. Despite being primarily herbivorous, feeding on plants, roots, and honey, the cave bear was still a dangerous opportunistic predator. Those jaws could crush bone. Those claws could disembowel with a single swipe. And it had one critical advantage over humans. It lived in the very caves that humans desperately needed. In the Ice Age, caves meant survival. They provided shelter from the killing cold, protection from the wind that could freeze exposed skin in minutes, and defensible positions against other predators. A good cave, deep enough to block the wind, dry enough to keep fire burning, with a narrow entrance that could be defended, meant the difference between life and death for a family group. But these refuges were already occupied. Archaeological evidence from sites like Chauvet Cave in France tells a haunting story. Claw marks, deep gouges carved into limestone walls, show where bears sharpened their claws for millennia. Some of these scratches are 8 feet off the ground, showing how large these bears truly were. In some caves, researchers have found the remains of hundreds of cave bears, evidence of denning sites used for thousands of years. Generation after generation of bears returning to the same caves to hibernate, to give birth, to die. And among them, signs of human presence, hearths, stone tools, and paintings. The archaeological record shows periods of bear use, then human use, then bear use again, a back and forth struggle lasting thousands of years. Sometimes the boundary was literal, bears in the deep chambers, humans in the entrance. Sometimes they took turns seasonally. Sometimes someone had to leave. Permanently. Humans and cave bears competed for the same real estate, and encounters were inevitable. Imagine being part of a family group, desperate for shelter as winter closes in. You find a cave, perfect, deep, defensible. But as you enter, your torch illuminates something in the darkness. A massive shape, breathing, watching you. A hibernating bear, disturbed by humans seeking shelter, would have been a nightmare scenario. Half asleep but still immensely powerful, a startled cave bear could kill with a single swipe of its paw. And it wouldn't stop with one person. An angry bear in the confined space of a cave could slaughter an entire family in seconds. At Goyet Cave in Belgium, archaeologists found human remains showing trauma consistent with bear attack. Crushed bones, puncture wounds matching bear teeth, defensive injuries on the forearms where someone tried to protect their face. The victim was a young adult, probably entering the cave first to scout, probably the one who made the fatal mistake of getting too close. But humans had something the bear didn't: fire and ingenuity. We learned to smoke bears out of caves, using damp wood to create thick, choking smoke that drove them from their dens. We learned to hunt them systematically, working in groups to corner them, using spears in coordinated attacks that kept us out of reach of those deadly claws. We learned their habits, when they hibernated, when they were most vulnerable, which caves they preferred. We learned that a bear with cubs was suicide to approach, but a bear in deep hibernation could be killed before it fully woke. We learned to read the signs: scat, claw marks, the musky smell that meant a bear was close. And we learned to use them. Cave bear claws became jewelry and tools, prized possessions passed down through generations. Their pelts became clothing, the warmest, most durable fur available. Their fat became lamp fuel and food. Their bones became tools, ornaments, even musical instruments. We wasted nothing. At Divj Babe in Slovenia, archaeologists found a cave bear femur with holes carved into it, possibly a flute, one of the oldest musical instruments ever discovered. Made from the bone of a creature that once competed with us for survival, turned into an object of culture and art. But the relationship wasn't always violent. Some caves show evidence of long coexistence. Bears in the back, humans in the front, separated by darkness and mutual caution. Both species needing shelter from the impossible cold. Both willing to tolerate the other's presence rather than fight in the deadly enclosed space. In Chauvet Cave, the famous cave paintings show multiple animals, mammoths, lions, rhinoceros, but no bears. Why? Perhaps because bears were too familiar, too immediate, too much a part of daily life to be worth memorializing. Or perhaps because drawing them on the walls would be like inviting them into the space humans had claimed. We'll never know. What we do know is this: slowly, over thousands of years, we pushed them deeper into the mountains. We became more efficient at hunting them. We occupied more and more of their caves. And they, specialized for their lifestyle, couldn't adapt fast enough. By 24,000 years ago, the cave bear was extinct, not from climate change alone, but from competition with humanity. We had claimed the caves, and we would hold them. But the price was paid in blood, theirs and ours. Every family had stories of bear attacks. Every child grew up knowing the risk. And every cave we entered might have one waiting in the darkness. The cave bear taught us something crucial: that intelligence and tools could overcome size and strength. That cooperation could defeat a more powerful individual opponent. That the world could be changed, territory could be claimed, and even the most fearsome competitor could be defeated. But it also taught us to be cautious, to check carefully before entering dark spaces, to respect the power of creatures larger than ourselves, and to never, ever assume we were safe. Those lessons would serve us well, because the cave bear was far from the most dangerous predator we would face. If the cave bear represented competition, the short-faced bear represented pure terror. In the Americas, particularly across what is now Alaska and the western United States, roamed Arctidus simus, the giant short-faced bear. This was the largest terrestrial mammalian carnivore of the Pleistocene. Let me put that in perspective. This animal was larger than any land predator that has walked the earth in over 10 million years. Standing 6 feet at the shoulder, taller than most humans, and 12 feet tall on its hind legs, with an estimated weight of up to 2,000 pounds, this bear dwarfed modern grizzlies. A male polar bear, the largest bear alive today, weighs around 1,500 pounds. The short-faced bear was 30% larger. But size wasn't its only advantage. Unlike most bears, which are omnivorous and somewhat lumbering, the short-faced bear was built for pursuit. Its legs were proportionally longer than any bear alive today, giving it a stride that could cover ground with shocking speed. While most bears have a shuffling gait, the short-faced bear had a ground-eating lope that was almost feline in its efficiency. Paleontologists estimate it could run at speeds exceeding 40 miles per hour. For comparison, humans can sprint at about 15 miles per hour, and only for short distances. A short-faced bear could chase you down and not even be breathing hard. Its skull was shortened, hence the name, creating a more powerful bite. The shorter the distance between the hinge of the jaw and the teeth, the more force can be generated. The short-faced bear's bite could crush bone, puncture skulls, kill with a single snap. Researchers have found mammoth bones with puncture marks matching this bear's teeth. It was hunting megafauna as a matter of routine. Some scientists believe it was primarily a scavenger, using its size and speed to steal kills from other predators. Others argue it was an active hunter. The truth is probably somewhere in between, opportunistic, intelligent, taking whatever food source was available, which included humans. When humans first crossed the Bering Land Bridge into North America around 15,000 years ago, they walked directly into this bear's territory. Imagine being among those first pioneers. You've traveled for generations across a frozen land bridge, following herds of mammoth and bison. Your entire world is cold and movement. Your people have survived saber-toothed cats in Asia, cave lions in Siberia. You think you understand predators. And then, in the distance, you see something that shouldn't exist. A bear the size of a small car, moving toward you with the fluid grace of a wolf. There was no escaping a short-faced bear if it decided to hunt you. You couldn't outrun it. You couldn't outclimb it. They were excellent climbers despite their size. You couldn't hide. They had an incredible sense of smell, possibly better than any bear alive today. Your only option was to avoid it entirely. And yet, humans survived. How? We learned, as we always learned. We observed that short-faced bears were solitary, unlike pack-hunting wolves. One bear was a manageable threat if you had numbers. We learned their territories, their ranges, the areas they frequented. We learned to read their signs, tracks the size of dinner plates, claw marks on trees 10 feet high, massive dung piles that marked territory boundaries, and we learned to respect those boundaries. Ancient archaeological sites in North America show something interesting. Human camps are almost never in the same locations as heavy short-faced bear activity. We didn't compete with them directly. We simply avoided them when possible. When avoidance wasn't possible, we used fire. Short-faced bears, like most bears, were wary of flames. A large fire could keep even this massive predator at bay. Sites from this period show evidence of fires much larger than necessary for warmth or cooking. Defensive fires kept burning day and night. We also developed better weapons. The outsmarting, a spear-throwing device that increased the range and power of spears, became common in North America during this period. Coincidence? Probably not. When you can't fight something hand-to-hand, you develop ways to fight from a distance. But people still died. At the Paisley Caves in Oregon, researchers found evidence of short-faced bear activity overlapping with human occupation. The bears were there first. The humans arrived. And then both species used the caves, probably at different times, probably very carefully. But mistakes happened. Someone stayed out too late. Someone checked a cave that wasn't empty. Someone's luck ran out. We don't find many human remains from this period showing direct bear predation, but that's not surprising. A short-faced bear kill would be efficient and complete. Bones would be crushed and consumed. Evidence would be scattered or destroyed. The victim would simply disappear, and their family would know what happened without needing to find remains. The short-faced bear went extinct around 11,000 years ago, likely due to the disappearance of the megafauna it preyed upon. As mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison died out, the food web collapsed. A 2,000-pound predator needs an enormous amount of food. When the prey disappeared, so did the bear. But for thousands of years before that, it was the apex predator of North America. And every human who lived there carried the memory of it in their nightmares. Native American oral traditions, passed down for thousands of years, speak of giant bears, creatures of immense power and danger. Are these memories of the short-faced bear? We can't know for certain, but the timing lines up. What we do know is this. Humans arrived in North America and encountered the most dangerous land predator on the continent. And we survived, not by fighting it directly, but by being smarter, more adaptable, more careful. By learning its ways and respecting its power, by knowing when to avoid conflict and when to stand our ground. The short-faced bear didn't make us weaker. It made us wiser. And that wisdom would help us survive everything else the Ice Age threw at us. In the steppes of Europe and Asia, a different nightmare prowled. Panthera spelaea, the cave lion, was up to 10% larger than modern African lions, with males weighing over 700 pounds. To put that in perspective, a modern male African lion weighs around 420 pounds. The cave lion was almost twice the size. Its body was built for power, massive shoulders that could take down mammoths, thick limbs that could pin prey twice its weight, and jaws that could deliver a bite force capable of crushing a bison's skull. Unlike modern lions, it likely had a sparse or absent mane, an adaptation to the cold that gave it a sleek, even more predatory appearance. Imagine a male lion, already one of the most intimidating predators alive, but 50% larger, leaner, and built for the hunt in ways modern lions have never needed to be. Cave lions were not cave dwellers by necessity. They used caves occasionally for denning, but they were creatures of the open steppe, pursuit predators that hunted in the same territories where humans foraged and followed game. They were fast, capable of speeds up to 50 miles per hour in short bursts. They were intelligent, capable of complex hunting strategies. And they were social, hunting in groups of up to 30 individuals. We know this from art. In the caves of Chauvet and Lascaux, Paleolithic artists painted cave lions with extraordinary detail. These weren't abstract symbols or stylized representations. They were portraits, drawn by people who had observed these animals closely. Too closely. The paintings show lions in motion, their bodies tense with predatory focus, their eyes tracking prey. The musculature is accurate, the proportions correct, the behavior recognizable. Some paintings show lions with their mouths open in what appears to be a roar. Others show them in groups, suggesting social behavior similar to modern lions. The artists captured the essence of these predators, their power, their grace, their deadly intent. They weren't just drawing animals they'd seen from a distance. They were documenting encounters. At Chauvet Cave, painted 36,000 years ago, there are over 70 individual animal figures. Lions dominate, more than any other species. Why? Because lions were the primary threat. They were what you thought about, what you prepared for, what you feared. And in some caves, we find handprints, human hands pressed against the wall, placed directly over lion paintings, as if to claim dominance over the image. As if to say, we survived you. We were here, and we saw you, and we lived to tell the story. But survival came at a cost. At Kostenki, a Paleolithic site in Russia, archaeologists found a human skeleton with puncture wounds in the skull consistent with large feline canine teeth. The spacing matches cave lion dentition perfectly. The victim was likely ambushed, a lone individual who strayed too far from the group and paid the ultimate price. The skull shows the person saw the attack coming. There's a defensive fracture on the forearm, where they raised their arm to protect their face. It didn't work. The lion's teeth punched through the skull, killing instantly. The body was left where it fell. The lion had eaten its fill and moved on. This wasn't unusual. Cave lions hunted large prey, horses, bison, young mammoths, but they were opportunistic. And a small group of humans, vulnerable and made of soft flesh, would have been an easy target. Easier than a horse that could kick. Easier than a bison with horns. Just slow prey that stood upright and could be knocked down with a single swipe. At some sites, we find evidence of humans specifically avoiding areas with high lion activity. Caves with lion dens nearby show no human occupation. Areas where lion hunting activity was concentrated show minimal human presence. We learned to read the landscape, to recognize danger zones, to know where lions hunted and avoided those territories when possible. When avoidance wasn't possible, we fought. But fighting a cave lion was desperation. Even with spears, even with numbers, it was almost suicide. Lions were faster, stronger, better armed. A human with a spear had one chance. If you missed, if the spear broke, if the lion dodged, you died. But sometimes we got lucky. At Vogelherd Cave in Germany, archaeologists found the skeleton of a cave lion with a flint blade lodged in its ribs. The lion had been speared, probably by a hunting party, and the wound had become infected. The lion survived for weeks before dying, the blade still embedded in its body. That hunter saved their group, at least temporarily. But they probably died doing it. Wounded lions don't retreat peacefully. We survived by never being easy. We moved in tight groups, never allowing anyone to be isolated. We carried fire, waving torches to scare lions away from camps. We created weapons, spears with sharpened stone points that could wound even a lion. We built barriers around camps, using thorn bushes and sharpened stakes to create perimeters. And we learned to read the land. We knew the sound of a lion's roar, different from a tiger's, deeper and more resonant, carrying for miles across the steppe. We knew the signs of a fresh kill, circling birds, the smell of blood, the silence of other animals. We knew that lions hunted at dawn and dusk, and we stayed close to camp during those hours. The cave lion vanished around 14,000 years ago, likely a victim of climate change and prey extinction. As the mammoth steppe transformed into forests, the open terrain where lions hunted disappeared. As mammoths and giant bison died out, the prey base collapsed. Lions, specialized for hunting large prey in open country, couldn't adapt fast enough. But for tens of thousands of years before that, cave lions were one of the most dangerous animals on Earth. And we shared their world. We competed for the same prey. We occupied the same territories. We feared them, respected them, and occasionally killed them. And we painted them, again and again, in cave after cave, across thousands of miles and thousands of years. We documented their existence, their power, their beauty. We made them eternal. Because the cave lion, more than almost any other predator, taught us what it meant to be human in the Ice Age. It taught us vigilance, cooperation, innovation. It taught us that the world was dangerous, that life was precious, that survival required everything we had. And somehow, impossibly, we survived them. We outlasted one of the greatest predators to ever walk the earth. Not because we were stronger, we weren't. Not because we were faster, we weren't. But because we were smarter, more adaptable, more determined. And that would prove to be enough. And then, there were the cats with knives for teeth. Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, is perhaps the most iconic predator of the Ice Age. With canine teeth up to 11 inches long, Smilodon fatalis was a killing machine unlike any cat alive today. Those famous fangs were not for slashing, not for tearing, not for biting through bone. They were precision instruments, designed for a very specific purpose, finding an artery and severing it. Smilodon was built like a wrestler. Its forelimbs were massively muscled, with strength comparable to a modern bear. Its shoulders were enormously powerful, its neck thick and strong. It didn't chase prey like a modern big cat. It ambushed, using those powerful limbs to grapple and pin large prey, bison, horses, young mammoths. Once the prey was pinned, Smilodon would carefully position its head, open its jaws to an incredible 90-degree angle, twice what a modern lion can achieve, and then drive those saber teeth deep into the throat or abdomen. The teeth would slice through flesh, between bones, directly into major blood vessels. Death came from massive blood loss within seconds. It was brutally effective, but also highly specialized. Those teeth were blade-like, designed for penetration, not for bone-crunching or struggling prey. If Smilodon bit down on something too hard, the teeth could fracture. Fossils show this happened, broken saber teeth that healed, showing the cat survived, but at great cost. This specialization meant Smilodon needed perfect execution. It had to ambush prey, control it completely, and deliver a perfect killing bite. No struggling, no mistakes, one chance to get it right. And occasionally, that prey was human. At Rancho La Brea in Los Angeles, where thousands of Ice Age fossils have been excavated from ancient tar pits, we find evidence of Smilodon in astonishing numbers. Over 2,000 individual cats have been recovered, more than any other large predator. They were drawn to the tar by the scent of trapped prey, and many became trapped themselves, dying slowly as they struggled in the asphalt. But we also find something else, evidence of injury and healing. Many Smilodon fossils show healed fractures, signs of arthritis, and worn teeth, evidence that these animals lived in social groups and cared for injured members. A solitary predator with a broken leg would die within days. But these cats survived for months, sometimes years, with serious injuries. Researchers found one skeleton of an older male with a broken and healed pelvis, arthritis in multiple joints, and worn teeth, evidence of a long, hard life. This cat couldn't hunt for months while that pelvis healed. It couldn't take down prey, couldn't defend territory, couldn't do anything except rest and heal. Yet it survived. The only explanation, other members of its pride brought it food. This social behavior made them even more dangerous to humans. A human encountering a lone Smilodon might have a chance, avoid the ambush zones, stay in open country, move in groups. But encountering a pride, that was a death sentence. Multiple cats, coordinating, communicating, working together to cut off escape routes and drive prey into ambush positions. We know humans encountered Smilodon regularly. Throughout California and the American Southwest, sites dated to 13,000 to 11,000 years ago show human and Smilodon activity overlapping. We competed for the same prey animals: bison, horses, camels. Yes, camels lived in Ice Age North America. We hunted in the same territories. Encounters were inevitable. At some sites, we find evidence of humans scavenging Smilodon kills. Bones with both cat teeth marks and human stone tool cut marks, showing we waited until the cats finished eating and then took what was left. Dangerous work. Smilodon defended their kills aggressively. But food was food, and hunger makes you brave. We also find evidence of humans killing Smilodon. At several sites, Smilodon bones show trauma consistent with stone weapons. A rib pierced by a flint point. A skull with a depression fracture from a club. These cats were hunted, either defensively or for their pelts and teeth. But killing a Smilodon was incredibly dangerous. Unlike a bear, which is somewhat slow and predictable, or a wolf, which can be driven off, a Smilodon was pure explosive power. Those forelimbs could pin a human to the ground in an instant. Those claws could disembowel with a single swipe. And those teeth, if they reached your throat, you had seconds to live. The strategy was always the same: numbers and distance. Never face a smilodon alone. Never get close. Use spears and otlotls to wound it from as far away as possible. And if it charged, run. Not to escape. You couldn't, but to give others time to get another spear into it. One archaeological site in Texas tells a harrowing story. Researchers found a smilodon skeleton with 3 flint points embedded in it, 2 in the ribs, 1 in the shoulder. Near it, they found human remains, 2 individuals, both with massive trauma. One had been mauled, the other crushed. The cat had died, but so had the humans. Everyone lost. Smilodon vanished around 10,000 years ago, along with most of the Ice Age megafauna. The leading theory is ecological collapse. The extinction of large prey animals led to the extinction of the predators that depended on them. Horses, camels, and bison were dying out in North America. Without them, Smilodon had nothing to hunt. But humans played a role too. We competed for the same prey. We hunted those prey animals to extinction or near extinction. We altered landscapes with fire, changing vegetation patterns and disrupting ecosystems. And we hunted Smilodon when necessary, removing individuals from the population. The relationship between humans and Smilodon was complex. We weren't the primary cause of their extinction. Climate change and ecosystem collapse were. But we were part of the equation. We added pressure to a species already struggling. We were the final straw. The last Smilodon died around 10,000 years ago, probably in South America, where they persisted slightly longer than in North America. Imagine that final individual, perhaps an old female, the last of her kind, hunting smaller prey because the megafauna were gone, slowly starving because she was specialized for targets that no longer existed. She wouldn't have known she was the last. She would have just been hungry, tired, slowly failing. And one day, she would have laid down and not gotten up. And with her, an entire lineage, millions of years of evolution, perfectly adapted for a world that no longer existed, ended. The age of the saber-toothed cat was over. But its legacy remains in our collective memory. The ultimate predator, armed with teeth like daggers, a killing machine perfected over millions of years. We survived it, but it left its mark on us, in our instincts, our fears, our stories. And in the caves where we painted them, trying to understand them, trying to control them through art, trying to survive them. Those paintings remain, 30,000 years later, a testament to the cats that hunted us, and the humans who lived to tell the tale. If you walked across Ice Age North America at dusk, you would hear them before you saw them. Howls echoing across the steppe, coordinated and intelligent. Complex vocalizations, each wolf communicating its position, its status, its intent. The sound carried for miles, and every prey animal, including humans, knew what it meant. The dire wolf was coming. Canis dirus, the dire wolf, was not just a larger version of the modern gray wolf. It was a distinct species, separated from gray wolves for over 5 million years. That's longer than humans have been separated from chimpanzees. They might have looked similar at first glance, but dire wolves were something else entirely. They were heavier, with a more robust skull and powerful jaws capable of crushing bone. An average dire wolf weighed around 150 pounds, with some individuals exceeding 200. For comparison, a modern gray wolf averages 80 to 100 pounds. Dire wolves were built differently, stockier, more muscular, with proportionally larger heads and more powerful bites. Recent DNA analysis has revealed something fascinating. Dire wolves couldn't interbreed with gray wolves. They were too genetically distant. While gray wolves could and did interbreed with dogs, coyotes, and even domestic dogs thousands of years later, dire wolves were isolated. They were a separate evolutionary line that had been developing independently for millions of years. But their most dangerous feature wasn't their size or strength. It was their pack behavior. Dire wolves hunted in coordinated packs of a dozen or more individuals. They pursued prey over long distances, using endurance and teamwork to exhaust and bring down animals far larger than themselves. Bison, horses, even young mammoths fell to their relentless pursuit. They didn't just chase, they strategized. Some wolves would drive prey toward others waiting in ambush. Some would go for the legs, hamstringing animals and bringing them down. Others would go for the throat once prey was disabled. They were intelligent, communicative, and terrifying in their efficiency. For humans, dire wolves represented a constant threat. A lone human, even armed, stood little chance against a pack. Your spear might kill one wolf, but while you were pulling it free, 11 others would be tearing into you. And dire wolves, unlike some predators, didn't hesitate. They didn't test defenses cautiously. They committed to the attack. At Rancho La Brea, dire wolves are the most common fossil, outnumbering even Smilodon. Over 4,000 individual dire wolves have been recovered from the tar pits. This suggests they were incredibly numerous, possibly more abundant than any other large predator in Ice Age North America. But it also suggests something else. They were attracted to trapped prey. While hunting live animals was their primary food source, they were also opportunistic scavengers. They would investigate anything that looked like an easy meal, including animals trapped in tar or humans who appeared vulnerable. Archaeological evidence suggests that early Americans avoided areas with high dire wolf activity when possible. Sites from the earliest period of human occupation in North America, 14,000 to 12,000 years ago, show interesting patterns. Human camps are rarely located in areas where dire wolf remains are abundant. When humans did occupy these areas, their camps show evidence of extensive defensive measures. Large fires kept burning constantly, barriers made of thorn bushes and sharpened stakes, and elevated platforms where people could sleep out of reach. But avoidance wasn't always an option. Resources like water, migration routes, and game trails had to be shared. And when humans needed to access these areas, encounters happened. At Blackwater Draw in New Mexico, archaeologists found evidence of a Clovis-era camp, dating to about 13,000 years ago, with dire wolf tracks preserved in ancient mud. The tracks show multiple wolves circling the camp, approaching and retreating, testing the defenses. The pattern suggests hours of this behavior, the pack waiting for someone to make a mistake, to leave the protection of the fire, to give them an opening. No human remains were found at this site, suggesting the people survived the encounter. But the tracks tell a story of psychological warfare. The wolves didn't charge. They waited. They watched. They made their presence known. They created fear and exhaustion, hoping someone would panic, hoping the fire would burn too low, hoping for that one moment of vulnerability. This was the terror of the dire wolf. Not a sudden attack you couldn't prepare for, but a siege. A patient, intelligent predator that could wait you out, that could coordinate with its pack to maintain pressure, that knew if it just kept watching, eventually you'd have to sleep, eventually you'd have to gather more firewood, eventually you'd make a mistake. Humans adapted by hunting in larger groups than might otherwise be necessary. A group of 5 people could hunt a deer effectively, but groups from this period often numbered 20 or more. The extra people weren't just for hunting, they were for defense. While some hunted, others watched for wolves. While some butchered the kill, others maintained a perimeter. No one was ever alone. We also developed increasingly sophisticated weapons. The atlatl, a spear-throwing device that increased the range and power of projectiles, became widespread during this period. For the first time, humans could kill from a distance. You didn't need to let a dire wolf get within arm's reach anymore. You could wound or kill it from 20, 30, even 40 feet away. This was a revolution in human warfare. And make no mistake, the relationship between humans and dire wolves was war. Not a war of extermination, not a war for territory in the traditional sense, but a war for survival. Both species needed the same resources. Both hunted the same prey. Both could kill the other. And so both did, whenever necessary. At the Wally's Beach site in Alberta, Canada, researchers found something extraordinary, a hunting ground used by both humans and dire wolves. The site preserves tracks from 13,000 years ago, human footprints, dire wolf tracks, and the remains of slaughtered animals. The tracks show humans hunting, then wolves arriving, then humans fleeing, then returning after the wolves left. It's a snapshot of coexistence through avoidance. We didn't fight unless we had to. We waited each other out. We shared the landscape by taking turns. It wasn't cooperation. Both species would happily kill the other, but it was a kind of grudging mutual respect. The wolves knew humans were dangerous. Humans knew wolves were dangerous. So both chose their battles carefully. But sometimes battles couldn't be avoided. At several sites across North America, we find dire wolf remains with stone points embedded in their bones. These weren't chance injuries. These were hunting kills or defensive actions where humans killed wolves that came too close. One particularly fascinating find from Nebraska shows a dire wolf skull with a stone blade lodged in its eye socket. The blade had been driven with tremendous force, penetrating the skull and killing the wolf instantly. But the blade broke off in the bone, and the hunter couldn't retrieve it, suggesting they were forced to flee immediately after the kill, probably by other pack members. The dire wolf went extinct around 9,500 years ago. Recent genetic studies have revealed why. They were specialists in a world that suddenly changed. Dire wolves had evolved to hunt large Pleistocene megafauna, horses, bison, camels. Their robust build, powerful jaws, and bone-crushing bite were adaptations for taking down and processing these large prey animals. When the megafauna disappeared, dire wolves couldn't adapt. Unlike gray wolves, which were more flexible in their diet and behavior, dire wolves were locked into their specialized niche. They couldn't switch to smaller prey effectively. They couldn't expand their range into new territories where different prey existed. They were perfectly adapted for a world that no longer existed. Gray wolves survived by being more flexible, more adaptable. They could hunt smaller prey, scavenge more efficiently, and eventually, crucially, they could coexist with humans. Some gray wolves began following human camps, scavenging scraps, slowly becoming comfortable with human presence. Over thousands of years, this led to domestication, wolves becoming dogs, joining human society rather than competing with it. Dire wolves never made that transition. They remained wild, remained competitors, remained threats. And when their world changed, they had nowhere to go. The last dire wolves probably died in isolation, in small pockets of habitat where some megafauna persisted slightly longer, watching their world disappear around them. The extinction of the dire wolf marked the end of an era. For over 100,000 years, these pack hunters had been one of North America's dominant predators. They had survived multiple climate changes, multiple glacial cycles, multiple ecosystem shifts. But they couldn't survive the combination of rapid climate change and human competition. We didn't hunt them to extinction directly, but we added pressure to a species already struggling. We competed for prey. We killed wolves that came too close. We altered landscapes with fire, changing vegetation patterns and animal movements. We were one factor among many, but we were a significant factor. The dire wolf taught us about pack tactics, about coordination, about the power of working together. Ironically, the very behaviors that made dire wolves so dangerous, group hunting, communication, strategic thinking, were behaviors humans also possessed. We were fighting a war against enemies who thought like us, who planned like us, who cooperated like us. And that made us better at all of it. The humans who survived the dire wolves were humans who perfected cooperation, communication, and strategy. We learned because we had to, and those lessons shaped everything that came after. They're gone, but not forgotten. When something stirs in the night, when your heart races for no reason, that's them, the beasts that hunted humans.